All right. Well, are you from another colony then? Pardon?
California?
I thought you were Virginian, actually. Sorry, we're claiming land all the way to the Pacific in some cases. Have a look at the Mitchell map. It's around across to determine if you're Virginian after all. Well, have you ever been to a coffee house before? Not this one, but any. Some of you are nodding. In London or Philadelphia, perhaps?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. All right. Well, I can assure you, Mr. Charlton's Coffeehouse is just as fine as any coffee house in Philadelphia, and just as fine as some of the London coffee houses. London has quite a few coffee houses, but they have the population to support almost 2,000 coffee houses. We don't even have 2,000 people here in Williamsburg, and half the people are enslaved, so we have one coffee house at a time, but it's still a very fine establishment. So we have men of the upper class coming and frequenting Mr. Charlton's coffee room, and we have middling sort as well. And like the London coffee houses, for a small entrance fee, you can get in minutes. Usually we don't have women in the coffee house, but we don't turn your legs away. But the men sit in the coffee room, they talk hour after hour after hour. Generally the ladies don't really want to listen to that. But if you do see a woman here, it's because she's working here, or she might be here to fetch her husband out of the coffee room. Because they'll sit and talk about many different things. Sometimes it's the latest news. Usually coffee houses offer the latest newspapers for your perusal. And sometimes it's the latest discoveries in that what they call natural philosophy, when they're studying the stars or plants or animals. Study the natural world. Mr. George Wood will sit in that coffee room for hours and just talk. But you know what building's next door, right?
Capitol.
Guess what else they talk about in the coffee room? Politics. And you might know that we call this road right out here, right in front of the Capitol building, right in front of the Secretary's office, that's the exchange. A lot of our merchants do business out there. So you have business also being discussed in the coffee room. And, well, sometimes they get some very interesting conversations going. And, well, this is the great place for news here in town, I can say that. But of course, why do you call a coffee house a coffee house?
Make coffee.
Serve coffee and those other fashionable beverages of tea and chocolate as well. So Mr. Charlton offers all of these things in the coffee room, and other things, actually. Sometimes you can mix that chocolate with Madeira and brandy, and he has a dining room here. This is not a public room. This is actually a room that's available for rent if you won't need a place to stay if you're passing through town. Are any of you come on business by chance? Did you come on business? No? Government business then? Pardon? All right, well, if you find that you need a private room, some of you might be staying in taverns and public spaces, or sharing a room with who knows who, strangers. This room is available for your rent, and if you want to have dinner or supper here, Mr. Charlton's cook can prepare almost anything. So whatever the customer asks for is put before them, pretty much. And this is the most expensive room in the coffee house. The wallpaper that you see is pretty expensive. And the carpet covers the entire floor. This is quite a bit of money. So especially if you want to impress people. Gentlemen, if you're in town, you want to do some clubbing, you can rent out this chamber and, well, pass an evening with your friends, smoking and doing things like that. You're really not Virginians.
Where would you sleep if you're staying here?
Oh, this is a coffee house, not a tavern. Taverns offer places to spend the night, but not here at the coffee house. And we're also a little more genteel than the taverns. You have some people with a little too much to drink down there. And inebriation is discouraged in the coffee room. So it's more genteel. And I can say the royal governor sometimes comes here. The king's representative, Governor Locke here. And my guess is you probably didn't hear what happened, let's see, involving the royal governor. Let's see, today is March 26th, 1766. So October 30th, how long ago was that? Last year. That was about 5 months ago. The royal governor was sitting on the porch. I think he was having a bowl of punch or something like that. But he had a purpose for being out there. How many of you have heard of the Stamp Act? The tax that Parliament imposed. Of course, we heard about it before they put a tax on paper goods. Mr. Patrick Henry, one of our elected representatives, actually made a speech against the Stamp Act in that Capitol building last year, saying it's unconstitutional for Parliament to tax us because they don't represent us. And a lot of people decided to protest the Stamp Act. Now, before the tax went into effect on November 1st, it was actually 2 days, October 30th, 2 days before that stamp tax was to start, the man chosen, appointed by the British government to be the stamp distributor, to distribute the stamps that were to be put on these different items to be taxed. Do you have a question?
Yes.
What?
Why you keep looking at me?
Because you're there, sir. You're so handsome.
I was a good teacher.
You're not in trouble, don't worry. But let's see, Mr. Mercer, you probably haven't heard of him, have you?
No.
But you've heard of Colonel George Washington. He's friends with Mr. Mercer. Now, Mr. Mercer was over in England for a good bit of time, and when he came back to the colonies, he had been appointed to be the stamp distributor for Virginia. He had no idea how unpopular the stamp tax was. So he came through town, and I think he was quite surprised to be met by a crowd of rather upset gentlemen. And pretty much these gentlemen met him right down, straight there in front of the Capitol building. And they wanted to know whether Mr. Mercer was really intending upon taking up this position as stamp distributor. And they pressed him. And Mr. Mercer, I think, was deciding he was not going to be intimidated. And he said, "Gentlemen, this requires much thought. I will give you an answer in 2 days." But they did not like that answer. And those men got a little more rough with Mr. Mercer. Now, the royal governor knew Mr. Mercer was coming through town. He had an idea what might happen. I think that's why he placed himself on the porch out there. He was keeping an eye on what was happening right down there in front of the Capitol. And at a particular moment, Governor Fauquier, the royal governor, the king's representative, called Mr. Mercer up on the porch. Now, if you're standing next to the royal governor, the king's representative, is anyone going to harm you?
Probably not.
We like Governor Fauquier, actually. We're very fond of him. But the king's representative was, in a way, standing between Mr. Mercer and that crowd. And the royal governor turned to Mr. Mercer and said, "Would you like to be my guest at the palace this evening?" And Mr. Mercer said, "Yes." And the royal governor escorted him down the street, all the way down to the governor's palace. Of course, with the royal governor next to him, no one was going to touch Mr. Mercer. The very next day, he announced he was not going to be the stamp distributor for Virginia. And some of the men that were actually pressuring him the day before picked him up, put him on their shoulders, and treated him to drinks at the tavern down the street. So some people said he made a good choice, but no one's been here to distribute these stamps for this tax. And without stamps for the legal documents, a lot of our county courts have not been functioning at all, except for the one that meant to say, Stamp Act is unconstitutional, and we're just going to ignore it. That was Northampton County. Newspapers, they require those stamps too, and most of our newspapers have not been printed at all. Mr. Purdy started printing again about 3 weeks ago, but by and large, we don't have a whole lot of newspapers here at the Coffeehouse because of the situation. But I hear, because of the protests in other colonies, Parliament's not really feeling that the Stamp Act is doing any good, and we're actually waiting to hear whether they're going to repeal it. We're hoping. I'm sorry, I'm talking about politics. I should know better. You came to town for other matters. Now, business, things like that. Would you like to actually have a look at the coffee room? And if you decide you would like to rent this chamber from Mr. Charlton or do business with him, I'll take you by way of his office so you'll know where to find him when he is back in the coffee house. He's not here at present, but follow me around this way.
So are they putting checkers on the table there, or is that
That's checkers. We like to play games.
sophisticated?
We also play we love to bet on board games. Actually, for people to gamble on anything they can gamble on. We like to have a good time. So we're usually drinking and gambling and dancing and celebrating as much as we can. If Parliament repeals this Stamp Act, I dare say we're going to have quite a few celebrations around Williamsburg. Indeed. But, well, this is Mr. Charlton's office. That's his desk right there. And that being said, this room is used as needed. So some people actually prefer this chamber to the dining room. And you can rent this chamber if you like this one better. And it's actually a little cheaper because it's smaller. The wallpaper isn't as expensive and there's no carpet on the floor. So this is another option. But generally, Mr. Charlton sits in that seat there, and that's his account books. Do any of you have an account with Mr. Charlton?
No.
Do you have an account with any of his associates?
Listen, I'm the youngest kid, I think, in this room, so.
But you're a gentleman, are you not, sir?
Definitely not.
Oh. Pardon me, I misjudged. All right, well, just so you know how things work, since some of you might be coming from far away. Well, the British government doesn't like to send British coins over to the colonies. So we actually don't have British coins to do business with. We have Spanish dollars circulating. As long as they're made of silver, it counts as money. Doesn't matter where it's coming from. But still, we don't have a whole lot of coins. So instead of paying with those things, a lot of business is done on credit. And that account book is where Mr. Charlton keeps track of all the accounts. So when Colonel George Washington wishes to rent that diner there, and he does that to club with his fellow Burgesses, Mr. Charlton writes that down in his account book on the page associated with Colonel George Washington's account. And that is something that is owed, in a way, to Mr. Charlton. Now, do you know what our main crop is here in Virginia?
Tobacco?
Tobacco, right. And Colonel Washington grows tobacco. And sometimes he'll send that tobacco by way of one of our merchants in town to London. And that tobacco goes in, let's say, if Mr. Greenhow purchases that goes in Mr. Greenhow's account book as Colonel Washington's credit. And this idea of credit down there can actually be transferred between merchants. And that's how business is done. I'm not exactly sure how my head is wrapped around this, but it seems to work very well. But there are cases when, well, I'll ask you, if you own a tavern like Mrs. Vogue down the street, a stranger's coming through town. You don't know their character, are they trustworthy or not? And you don't know if they're ever going to come back through town. Do you think you're going to give that person credit? Yeah, that's a good business decision. So in those cases, that's when Mr. Charlton might ask for ready money. And in case any of you have any ready money in your pockets to spend, I don't think Mr. Charlton would mind if I, and in the interest of promoting his business, offer you a sample of what he has in the copier. Now, have you all had chocolate before? Not everybody has, believe it or not. It's dark chocolate, and there's spices, like cayenne pepper and cinnamon and nutmeg, and I think there's anise in there and orange. So it's a bit spicy. If that sounds to your liking, then you might want to try a sample of that. We also have coffee and tea. It's a coffee house. So decide what you want to try, and come on in. You're not so busy at present, as you can see, but oh.
Sir, there we go.
So would anyone care for chocolate?
Would anyone like
We're all
coffee or
curious
tea?
about chocolate.
Coffee?
Usually a
Sure,
chocolate.
I see the drink. Chocolate is a drink.
I'm using medicine for children.